Everyone was stunned when the officer's K9 police dog uncovered hidden side of her boyfriend. Detective Priya and her loyal K9, Juno, have always been a perfect team. But everything changes when Juno reacts violently to her boyfriend, Alex. After discovering a hidden file linking Alex to a dangerous criminal syndicate, Priya's world is turned upside down. As the truth unfolds, Priya must decide if she can trust the man she loves or expose him, risking everything. With danger closing in, Juno's instincts may be the only thing that keeps them alive. The air felt thick and heavy as Priya stood at the doorway of the animal shelter, the sharp smell of disinfectant mixing with the faint scent of wet fur. Inside, a large kennel with a single dog inside caught her attention, a German Shepherd. Her fur was a blend of dark brown and black, the sort of coloring that made her appear both regal and cautious. The dog's eyes were alert but filled with a quiet sadness that Priya recognized all too well. This dog had been through something that left a mark deeper than just physical scars. "Her name is Juno," the shelter worker said softly, stepping back so Priya could approach. Juno's ears twitched, but she didn't move from her corner. Her gaze was piercing, intense. She observed Priya without blinking, as if studying her every move. Priya bent down slowly, offering a hand. She had always known that her next partner would be a dog, but the moment she locked eyes with Juno, she felt an immediate connection. It wasn't just about the job, it was about something more. She could sense that this dog had a story, one that Priya would help write. The worker sighed, pulling a leash from the wall. "She's had a tough past, but there's something about her, something that tells me she could be great. It'll just take time, and a lot of patience." Priya smiled, an edge of determination in her eyes. "I'm good at both." Weeks later, Priya and Juno had settled into a routine. The dog was a quick learner, picking up commands with impressive speed. Priya could feel the bond forming, like the pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Juno wasn't just a partner. She was becoming part of Priya's life. Each evening, they would run through training drills, Priya's commands sharp and clear. The dog responded with focus and precision, her every movement fluid and calculated. But there was something unsettling about Juno's behavior. At first, it was small, little growls when a loud noise startled her, or a moment of hesitation when walking past certain spots. Priya assumed it was the result of Juno's past, some trauma left behind by previous owners. It made sense. Juno's past hadn't been easy, and the dog was still learning to trust. Then came Alex. Priya had met him a few months ago at a cafe near the police station, and he had been perfect from the start. Charming, funny, with an easy smile that made everything feel lighter. They started dating, and Priya found herself growing closer to him with every passing day. She introduced him to Juno, confident that her dog, with her calm yet loyal nature, would welcome him into their lives. But Juno didn't. The first time Alex came over, the dog stood in the doorway, her stance rigid, her body tense. Juno didn't growl. No, it was something more chilling. She was watching Alex, her gaze unwavering. As soon as he stepped closer, Juno's lips curled slightly, revealing a row of sharp teeth. The hair along her back bristled, her body vibrating with unease. Alex looked down at her with a raised brow, clearly surprised, but he tried to mask it with a chuckle. "I guess I'm not the dog whisperer." Priya gave a reassuring smile. "She's just getting used to you. Give her time." But the growling started soon after. Subtle at first, then louder. Whenever Alex entered the room, Juno's eyes would lock onto him, and her low growls filled the space. Priya tried to dismiss it, telling herself that Juno was just nervous or confused. After all, the dog had been through so much. Weeks passed, and the pattern continued. Every time Alex came by, Juno would growl, bark, or even snap at him. Priya tried to reassure Alex, telling him it was just part of Juno adjusting to new people. But Alex's unease grew. "Is she always like this around me?" he asked one night, his smile faltering. Priya hesitated. "She's just protective. That's all." Despite her assurances, Priya couldn't shake the growing sense of discomfort. There were moments when Juno's behavior seemed too deliberate, too intentional. The way the dog watched Alex with such intensity, as if she was seeing something Priya wasn't. One afternoon, Priya and Juno were assigned to a routine patrol near a warehouse district, part of an investigation into a string of robberies and drug activity that had been plaguing the area. As they approached the street near one of the warehouses, Juno started to growl again, her body trembling with agitation. "Juno? What is it?" Priya asked softly, but the dog was fixated, her eyes glued to a particular address painted on a building's wall. It was Alex's address. Priya froze, a shiver running through her. It was a coincidence, she told herself. The area was busy, full of warehouses and run-down buildings. There were many addresses nearby. But Juno's reaction was unmistakable. The dog was convinced that something was wrong. They continued their patrol, but Priya couldn't shake the feeling that Juno was trying to tell her something. The unease in her stomach grew with each step, and she couldn't ignore the mounting suspicion. Why was Juno acting like this? Why did the dog hate Alex so much? And just like that, the small seed of doubt took root. That night, as Priya and Alex sat on her couch, she noticed Juno standing near the window, staring at them both. The growl that had become so familiar now sounded louder, sharper. Alex shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the dog. Priya caught his glance, but before she could speak, Juno snapped. It wasn't a bark, it was a vicious, warning growl that made Alex sit up straighter, his face pale. Priya felt the weight of the moment, the creeping realization that she was facing something she hadn't been prepared for. Maybe she's just not ready for this, Alex said, his voice strained, but there was something behind his words, something that made Priya's stomach twist. Could Juno be seeing something Priya was missing? Priya glanced at Juno, her dark eyes glowing in the dim light from the lamp. The dog's body was taut, her muscles stiff beneath the glossy fur, and she was no longer just a companion. She had become a silent witness, a warning in her own right. She had never growled like this before, not at anyone. Not even when Priya first brought her home, confused and hurt from whatever had happened in her past. There was something about Alex, something hidden just beneath the surface, something Juno had picked up on before Priya had even considered it. "Juno, stop," Priya said softly, but the dog didn't move. Instead, Juno's gaze never wavered from Alex, her growl deepening. Alex shifted in his seat, his fingers drumming nervously on the armrest. Priya forced a smile, but it felt hollow. She wanted to believe in Alex, wanted to believe that Juno's behavior was just a phase. But as the moments dragged on, the weight of the doubt pressed harder on her chest. The next day, Priya's suspicions flared once again when she found something hidden in Alex's apartment. It wasn't meant to be found. She could tell by the way the file had been hastily shoved behind a stack of magazines on his desk. At first, it looked innocuous, just a collection of documents. But as she opened it, a chill ran through her. The file was filled with details, plans, dates, names, all pointing to one thing: the very crime syndicate she was investigating. Her fingers trembled as she sifted through the papers. One document caught her eye, a map with key locations marked in red. Her pulse quickened as she traced the lines. Places where recent robberies had taken place, warehouses linked to the drug trade. But the worst part was the name, Alex's name, listed as an associate of a notorious figure she had been hunting for months. Priya closed the file, her breath shallow. A knot formed in her stomach, one that refused to loosen. She wanted to dismiss it, to chalk it up to some misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew there was no other explanation. Alex had been involved, and she had to know why. The next night, as she and Juno walked through the quiet streets after another routine patrol, Priya's mind spun. She couldn't talk to Alex about this, not yet. The shock of what she had discovered was too much, and she didn't know how to confront him without unraveling everything they had built. She needed answers first. Juno, however, was far from quiet. The dog had become even more agitated, her hackles raised, eyes sharp and darting. As they passed by the same alleyway Alex had once dragged her into, Juno suddenly stopped. Her nostrils flared, and she pulled at the leash, determined to keep moving forward. Priya yanked the leash back. "What is it, girl?" she murmured, watching Juno closely. There was no reason for the dog to be so tense. Yet, she refused to budge. Priya's heart skipped a beat, her mind running through the possible scenarios. Could it be the area they were walking through? Was there something about it that triggered Juno? Just as she was about to tug again, the sound of distant footsteps echoed down the alley. Priya's body stiffened, instinctively pulling Juno closer to her. She heard the quiet murmur of voices, two men, one of them too familiar. Alex. She froze. This wasn't a coincidence. From the shadows, she could just make out his silhouette as he spoke with someone. Priya couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but it was enough to make her stomach churn. Alex had been hiding something. She was sure of it now. The next day, she confronted him. She had to. Priya's mind was in chaos as she stood before him, trying to keep her voice even. Alex was in the kitchen, his back to her as he poured coffee, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind her eyes. "Alex," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of 1,000 questions. "There's something I need to ask you. Something important." He turned, his usual easy smile fading slightly as he saw the expression on her face. "What's going on?" Priya didn't waste time. "I found something, Alex. In your apartment. A file. You're involved with the same syndicate I've been investigating." The silence that followed was thick, thicker than any silence she'd ever felt between them. He didn't speak right away, his gaze drifting to the floor. It was the kind of hesitation that she hadn't expected from him. He said at last, his voice low. "I was involved. But that was a long time ago. I left that life behind." Priya's heart sank, but she forced herself to listen. "You're telling me you've just walked away from all of it? No consequences?" Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's not that simple, Priya. You don't understand. I didn't have a choice. I did things. I had to do things to protect my family. I'm not that person anymore, I swear." But Priya couldn't push away the growing unease in her chest. Juno had warned her. The dog's instincts had been right. Alex's words were hollow, each one more desperate than the last. "I want to believe you," Priya whispered, but the words felt foreign, as though they didn't belong in her mouth. "But how do I know you're telling the truth?" Alex stood silent for a moment, the weight of her question hanging between them like an impossible chasm. Priya's stomach twisted as her gaze shifted to Juno, who stood near the doorway, watching them both with eyes that had once been filled with nothing but trust. Now, there was only uncertainty in their depths. Alex stepped toward her, his hand reaching out. "Priya, please. I'm trying to protect you. From all of this." Priya felt a sharp pang in her chest as she stared at him, torn between the man she had come to care for and the undeniable truth of Juno's warning. The tension in the room felt palpable, almost suffocating, like the walls themselves were closing in. She could smell the faint scent of leather from his jacket mixed with the crisp, metallic tang of sweat that seemed to hang in the air between them. It wasn't just the air that was thick, but the weight of their unspoken history and the betrayal that now hung over it. Priya's gaze flickered back to Juno. The dog, still motionless near the doorway, stared at Alex with a look that sent an unsettling chill through Priya. Juno's ears were back, her body stiff, and her eyes held a sharpness that Priya couldn't ignore. The loyalty in them had always been unwavering, but now there was something else, something that spoke of deep mistrust. It was as though Juno saw the truth in Alex's eyes, the truth Priya had been avoiding. "I want to believe you," Priya whispered, her voice tight. "But I can't, not with everything that's happened." Alex's expression faltered for only a second. It was a subtle shift, but it was enough for Priya to notice. The mask was slipping, and the cracks in his facade were beginning to show. He reached out again, but Priya took a step back, her instincts screaming at her to keep her distance. "You don't understand, Priya," he said, his voice low and pleading. The syndicate, they have power. They know things. They control everything. If I had walked away, they would have come after you. I had to stay close to protect you. You have no idea what it's like to be stuck in that life. The words felt rehearsed. Priya had heard them all before, from other criminals, other men trying to justify their actions. But this wasn't just about protecting her. This was about using her, about manipulating her trust to cover his own tracks. Alex wasn't a victim. He was part of the game. And now, the game was closing in on them. Before Priya could respond, the front door crashed open. The sound of heavy boots hitting the floor echoed through the apartment. Priya's heart skipped, her body instinctively tensing as the sudden chaos flooded the space. Masked men poured in, their faces obscured by dark cloths, their movements fast and aggressive. The acrid scent of gunpowder filled the air, mixing with the metallic tang of sweat and the sharp scent of panic. Priya's hand shot to her side, reaching for her weapon, but it was Juno who moved first. The dog leapt into action, charging forward with a force that sent one of the attackers sprawling. The man's body slammed against the wall with a sickening thud, his weapon slipping from his grasp as Juno's growls filled the room. Priya took a step back, her eyes scanning the room for an escape route, but it was too late. The attackers were already closing in. She tried to level her gun, but her hands were shaking. Everything was happening too fast. The air was thick with violence, with fear, with the bitter sting of betrayal that now poisoned the very air they breathed. Juno was at her side, her growls deepening as she faced off against another attacker. The dog was a blur of motion, her teeth bared as she defended Priya with everything she had. The attacker swung his arm, trying to land a blow, but Juno was too quick. She knocked him off balance, sending him crashing to the ground, where he lay motionless. Priya didn't have time to feel relief. Another man lunged at her, his knife flashing in the dim light. She barely had time to react before Juno lunged again, this time sinking her teeth into the man's arm. The attacker screamed, his grip on the knife loosening, giving Priya the chance to disarm him. But in the chaos, something went wrong. Juno yelped in pain, the sharp sound piercing through the chaos. Priya's heart stopped. She turned just in time to see Juno stagger back, a deep gash along her side where one of the attackers had struck. The blood soaked into Juno's fur, darkening the once golden strands. "Juno!" Priya cried, rushing to her side. She dropped her weapon and knelt beside the dog, her hands shaking as she checked for wounds. The injury was serious, but Juno was still breathing, still alive. Priya could feel the dog's strength, the fire in her eyes, and she knew Juno wasn't ready to give up. The battle raged on around them, but Priya's focus was singular. Juno's loyalty was everything in this moment. It was the only thing that had never wavered, the only thing that remained constant amidst the lies and betrayal. "I won't let them take you too," Priya whispered, her voice raw with emotion. She pressed her hand against Juno's side, trying to stop the bleeding. The dog looked up at her, her eyes softening just for a moment, as if understanding the unspoken vow Priya had made. In the distance, the sounds of the fight were beginning to quiet. The attackers were falling one by one, their strength fading under the onslaught of Priya's team. The stench of blood and sweat was thick in the air, and the apartment felt too small, too crowded with danger. Priya rose, her hand still on Juno's side, and surveyed the scene. The last of the attackers was subdued, lying motionless on the floor. She could hear the sound of sirens growing louder outside. The fight was over. The criminals had been taken down. But as Priya looked down at Juno, her loyal companion, she realized that the battle was far from finished. As the door to the apartment burst open again, Priya's team rushed in, their weapons ready. But it wasn't the arrival of backup that made her heart race. It was the realization that Alex had been behind it all. He had used her, used Juno. Every moment of their relationship had been a carefully orchestrated lie. He had been working for the syndicate from the inside, playing the part of the caring boyfriend while manipulating Priya's trust to cover his own tracks. Juno's instincts had been right from the beginning, and now In the cold aftermath of the chaos, Priya knew what she had to do. She turned to face Alex, who stood frozen in the corner, his eyes wide with guilt and fear. "I trusted you," Priya said, her voice steady despite the fury that churned inside her. "And you betrayed me." Alex opened his mouth, but no words came out. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. There was no turning back now. Priya took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had to do what was right, for herself, for the law, and for Juno. "Alex, you're under arrest." The investigation into the syndicate continued, but the criminals had been dismantled, one by one. The evidence had been gathered, the leaders had been taken down, and Priya and Juno stood victorious. The bond they shared, unbreakable, tested through fire, was the one thing Priya could count on. As she stood with Juno by her side, watching the sunset from the rooftop, Priya felt a quiet sense of peace settle in her chest. No matter what happened next, she knew she wasn't alone. Not anymore. Juno, her loyal partner, would always be by her side.